Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Hello, it is Petrie here with you through until 1 o'clock, and of course at midnight it is your chance to talk back, and we'll be talking about education. We're talking about education at midnight because we've now been told for the first time in 10 years there is set to be a new curriculum, and we have the information, but that's all a bit dull, isn't it? So actually what I want to talk to you about is what you think should be taught in schools. If you had your time again as a pupil, what would you want to learn? What in life do you think was missing from your education? Some of the changes that they're going to be making I think are fairly reasonable, actually. We mentioned it briefly yesterday because it was in the papers about how kids are going to be taught how to do basic things like figure out a mortgage or savings or APR on a credit card, or all of those things that none of us had any clue about, probably still don't, and we just sort of muddle through life. So that I think is a really good thing. But I know that in my school there were lessons that were a complete and utter waste of time. I thought pure maths was absolutely pointless. I didn't get that at all. You know, a log table. I mean, I don't know about you, but I haven't looked at a log table since I left school. I certainly haven't used a set of compasses either. So I just wonder what you thought was a complete waste of time during your education and what you wish you were taught when you were at school. And if you've got children or grandchildren that are at school, what is it that what do you think they're lacking? What are they missing in terms of a broader education? I just don't think we teach children about life. We don't give them the tools that they need to use, like interview skills, job interview skills, even just talking to adults, you know, doing those things. And with lots of jobs now not being available to young people, like, you know, I waited on tables in a cafe in Banbury when I was 14 or 15. That sort of, you had to learn how to talk to people and be polite to people and, you know, take orders and all of those things. And it all sounds a bit basic, but actually it was really, really useful. I didn't think much of it at the time, but of course it was useful. So it gives you confidence, you know, all of those things. So I just wonder what you think should be on the school curriculum, what you wish you were taught when you were at school, and what was the biggest waste of time when you were at school, and what should modern schools look like? I mean, I have my views. I'll talk more about those a little bit later on, but I definitely think at the age of 14 there needs to be a split. There needs to be, look, if you want to go and do the sciences, then go and do them. I don't mind science as long as it's applied to something sensible, like physics. God, I hated physics. I hated physics. But if they'd applied that to, I don't know, rewiring a socket or something like that, that would have been really useful. You know, that might have helped me. I mean, of course I can do that myself now, but, you know, why wasn't I taught that when I was at school? That would have been really, really helpful. So I just wonder what you think should be in a school curriculum to prepare children, or what would have prepared you better for a life when you left education. Give me a call, please. 0344 499 1000. That's the number you're going to need. You can also message me if you text the word talk and then your message to 87222. So that's coming up at midnight, your chance to talk back. But these new measures that have been announced by government, the Education Secretary, Bridget Phillipson, they all look the same. Have you noticed that? They all look the same in in the Labour government. I think they got the same hairdresser or same stylist or something, I don't know. Anyway, Bridget Phillipson announced that children will be taught how to budget as well as how to spot fake news and AI-generated content. I think that is brilliant. A few adults I know could do with some of those lessons in a bid to modernise the national curriculum. Now, changes have been welcomed by head teachers, but raise concerns on the necessary funding to implement them, of course. But how does our education system serve the future? And what are the gaps that employers, why weren't employers asked to join in with this consultation? Anyway, because employers know what kids are missing, what they don't have when they turn up to start work. Well, to find out a little bit more about that, we're going to be talking now to Jonathan McKenna, founder and MD of Macbrook Gas in East Anglia. Jonathan, thank you so much for joining me.
Good evening, thanks for having me on.
Good evening, good to see you.
Thank you.
Do you think that employers should have been at the consultation stage here? Because, look, we know that we're turning out at the moment kids that are just not ready for the workplace. Should somebody like you have been there and said, right, this is what's missing, this is what you need to put on the curriculum?
Yeah, most definitely. We had an encounter earlier on this year when we recruited 20 apprentices from our local training facility, and the interview skills were very much lacking. We were pretty shocked by it, and we discussed it amongst ourselves how at school, you know, they should practice this and, you know, give them mock scenarios with future employers. You know, we were lucky enough to take on 20 apprentices who were really, really good. They interviewed really well, but we must have interviewed nigh on 70, 80 kids. Who
wow. And what were the failings when they were being interviewed, Jonathan? I'd be interested. Could they not look you in the eye? Were they, you know, what were the failings?
It was eye contact. It was very much of they didn't have that interaction with their future potential employer. Yeah, it was the whole host of things that you know, I found really useful when I was going through them stages. You know, I started off as a trainee plumber myself, so you know, I found them skills really helpful, and I just feel as though they're very much lacking in today's youth, which is quite frustrating, really, that, you know, they're not being taught this within schools.
So just a lack of those communication skills. Like I said, you know, I probably learned those when I was waiting at Banbury Cross Cafe at the age of 14 or 15, but those jobs aren't available anymore. But you know, if they can't communicate, what about their work ethic, if you like? You've got a bunch of young. How old were your apprentices when you took them on?
So they ranged between 16 and 18. So, you know, they were some of them are fresh out of school.
Right. And what were they like when you first started training them? Did they have the work ethic, the kept timings well, all of those things?
The work ethic was there. You know, we've had no dropouts. That's the biggest problem with apprenticeships, is the dropout. You know, I've had a little look at the V levels, what you were speaking about on the intro. You know, that is prolonging the classroom setting for these students, and that's where the dropout comes. You know, I do feel as though it's the same as the T levels. We're getting into the scenario of bums on seats, rather than actual physical training and getting them in the workplace, getting them into that work ethic. And getting them out, you know, into society and dealing public facing rather than a classroom setting. That doesn't always work out, and the frustration does shine through with these kids. You know, you're sitting there and they're on this T levels. It was soul destroying, really, because some of the kids were really talented, but you know, it takes an employer such as ourselves to you know, to take these on and give them the chance, and there's not enough employers doing that. You know, we felt strongly enough when we were doing these interviews. We actually acquired our own training facility, Norwich Gas and Electrical Centre, and we're rolling out our own training facilities now, because there's just not enough people doing it. And you know, we're staring down the barrel of we already are there. You know, a massive skills shortage industries across the board. You know, we're a turnkey solution. We do heating, electrical, plaster and joinery, and we are lacking skills in every single sector. It's, you know, it's a real struggle to recruit, and we are having that sort of mentality of grow our own, but you know, it's not something that happens overnight, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems to me that a lot of the education that this sort of sausage factory that we put children through, it just turns them off learning. And like you're saying, with these T levels, they want to apply their skill. They want to do, right. These are young people who are motivated by doing something, not just listening to it. Surely.
I couldn't agree with you more. So, you know, I was speaking to the tutors, and I still do speak to the tutors, obviously, because we've got a training facility within our group. And you know, they're really frustrated by it, because they've got, you know, students who are in their classes who are really talented, and you know, there's some stories where they've got this grand ambition to have this career in heating or electrical engineering, and you know, they can't get on a placement with an employer, so they end up, you know, going on a different career path, which, you know, that's terrible. You know, at the age of 17, 18, to be really passionate about an industry but not having the opportunity to go and work with an employer, you know, and then going off to do something else that they're not, you know, they're not passionate about. It's soul destroying, it really is.
At that age as well, to be forced almost to give up on what is an exceptionally good career, right? I mean, these tradies, they're fantastic career. I mean, I was even saying to my son at one point, "No, have you thought about plumbing? You know, that would, because you can earn a
bad career, trust me."
Yeah, you can earn a fair wage at that, right? But and also, like you're saying, the communication skills. That's how you keep your customers, right? You can't have somebody who's a brilliant plumber but who can't look a customer in the eye and tell them that there's a problem or need them to wait an extra day, or all those communication skills. So what would you want to see changed at schools? Had you been around that table, what would you have recommended to the Education Secretary?
So first things first, I would have gave 14 to 15-year-olds taster sessions into our industry. So, you know, at school, leaving age of 16, they know where they're going, they know what they want to do. We don't want to be at 17, 18 and they're sat on a T-levels course with no chance of going anywhere. You know, we need to be getting this before they leave school, where we've still got them, you know, we've still got them in hand. And then, you know, they need to work on social skills, the social skills of people who we see coming through the younger generation are really lacking. And, you know, I don't know if that's due to, obviously, we had lockdown with COVID and, you know, everybody was in that sort of family bubble. Or it's just the sort of society that we're in at the moment. But we need to break the cycle as an industry, because we're going to end up with no tradespeople. We're going to be struggling. But yeah, going back to your question, I think we need to look at the social skills side, definitely. And I think we need to be given, you know, 14 to 16 or 14 to 15-year-olds the chance to taste the sessions into industries they actually want to be going into.
Has social media played into this as well in a way? Because, you know, I certainly know that my son is a bit older, so he didn't have all of that attention taken away from him. He did go out and socialise with his friends. He did do, you know, bar work when he was old enough and all of those things. So, but I think this generation, perhaps they do get sucked into that world where they don't have to communicate, or they're on headphones playing games. So it's a different type of communication. They've just got to relearn the whole thing, haven't they?
Yeah, definitely. You know, even down to, you know, not on site, even in our office, we have a young group of office staff, and they'll message each other rather than go and speak to them, and in the same office. You know, it's just like, oh, you need to not do that and actually go and speak to your colleague. You know, it is about breaking down that, and I think that has got a massive part of it. You know, you've got, you know, I've got a son who's 16. And, you know, a while ago he used to sit up and play on his game and he'd be speaking to his friends, but they wouldn't go out and interact. They wouldn't, be out and about. And I think that has got a part of it, because while you're out and about with your friends, you're interacting with the older members of society, you're going into shops, you're communicating, you have to, you're in the public eye, you're in the public domain. So, that's, I think social media has got a part of it. And obviously, parents, we try and protect our children and try and keep them in, shall we say. So that, I think there's a lot of different elements that contribute to this, but we need to find a way around it, because we're just continually cheering these kids out.
Yeah, we think we're helping them, but we're not. I mean, because they've got to be able to communicate. They've got to be able to talk to adults. And, even when my son was in his 16, 17, if his friends came round, he'd be like, "Oh, Mum, you're really embarrassing." But you'd have a chat with the youngsters and just get them used to the idea of talking to an adult, even if it's just for 5 minutes. And that's really important, isn't it? Just to make them have conversations, if you like.
100%. And going back to your first comment about waiting tables and things like that, when I was 14, 15, I was out and about fitting garden taps. I knew I wanted to be a plumber at that age, and it's that bit of entrepreneurial ambition that you have. But kids can't do that now. Saturday jobs,
they're not there
anymore. It's not something that's done. And that's a great way. It's a great inroad to employment and that bit of self-sufficiency, I suppose.
Yeah, it's really important. And anybody who's thinking of being a plumber, just look behind Jonathan at his beautiful home, and then you can see that you do all right if you're a good one. It is stunning, by the way.
It's not, yeah. Thank you. Thanks.
Jonathan McKenna, thank you very much indeed. Go into plumbing. It's a good job. Founder and MD of Macbrook Gas in East Anglia, and he currently employs 20 apprentices aged 16 to 18 and has invested more than $500,000 in a purpose-built training academy, because he needs those young people to come through to be work ready to go into the industry that he works in. Well, let's now talk to a couple of youngsters, Maya and Aditi. Maya's 19, Aditi is 20, from the Lost Lessons campaign. Good to see you. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. Oh, look at you, gorgeous girls.
Thank you so much for having us.
No, really welcome. What did you make of what Jonathan was saying there about, it seems to me like basic communication skills. I know that we're going to talk about other things that you're pushing for in the curriculum, but does that resonate with you, that young people are not learning those skills perhaps in the same way as us older folk did?
Yeah, I think it was really good to see somebody talking about how practical education should be, and how we really need to be preparing people for the world, and how we engage students to talk to each other, to really feel a part of their communities. And that's one of the big things we've actually pushed in one of our core asks for our campaign as well.
Yeah, I mean, what is causing this almost fear of communicating? I was forced to, as a youngster, communicate more with older people and all of those things, but it seems to have changed so much that there does seem to be this reticence, or this gap now between older generations and the younger generation at the moment.
I think that exams can have quite a big impact on that, and I think the same sort of standardized methods that kids have to take at school of examinations, just testing them on the essay-based skills and not really testing their understanding of the world around them. I think we had one suggestion from an event that we went to, where kids could identify different countries on a world map of where they think migrants have come from, for example, from history, rather than having to maybe write an essay on a topic that they maybe spent a few lessons learning about. I just think that if examinations were less to do with, can you recite this textbook, and more to do with, so how
Yeah.
Can you apply what you know about the world and what you've been taught about the world?
Oh my God, that is music to my ears, because I think the whole sausage factory of exams and just like you said, just literally not testing your intelligence, testing your memory. I mean, what's the point of that? That doesn't seem to achieve, like you said, there's no critical thinking there. There's no pushing you to explain yourselves. So what changes would you want to see to the curriculum that you think would benefit you going out into the world, or even just out changing society for future generations?
We were considering implementing mandatory sort of youth. I think if we push for PSHE to include kids getting involved in their local communities, that could be one way into sort of dealing with the world around you and not feeling like you're being thrown into the workforce and into having to interact with people outside of school. So if we sort of made PSHE more active and thought about how can we get involved in our community, how can we sort of talk to the people around us, find out what's important to them, can we volunteer at food banks, like things like that, I think would be one
That's
way
a really good idea. I mean, in my school, I remember one time, we just poked a memory there, where I was sent out onto the streets to talk to old people about their lives. And it was in Brackley. I went to school in Brackley. Probably don't know where those, but and we had to walk the streets with a clipboard asking old people about how they lived. But it's stuff like that, actually, isn't it? That does introduce you to people you would never ever talk to. So I'm sorry, I didn't know which one is which. Which one is Aditi? Aditi and Maya, lovely. So Aditi, do you think that schools let you down, that they don't prepare you for, because you're off, you're out and you've got to go and get a job? Where's the training for that?
Absolutely. I think schools have a really hard job to do, but part of our work is trying to help show where those gaps are, and let students also, we have so much passion and there are things that we care about, that it would be great to have students have the opportunity to really work on those things in their community, push out that engagement and that joy for learning that I think is sometimes missing when you don't feel seen in what you're learning at school. And I think a lot of that happens when you're learning texts that don't resonate with you. We have English in our English GCSE students, only 1% of the time have read books by an author of colour, and I think it really shows how much work they have to do to really feel
and that is maddening, because there are so many brilliant authors of colour. And actually, if you look at the books in America, there's Maya Angelou, who's one of my favourite authors. I just think she's just a goddess, and so many other people who have really added to the conversation. They're not there just because of their colour, right? They're there because they're blooming brilliant, and that people should be learning that.
Yeah, exactly.
So do you think that, like I was saying, that employers should have been around the table discussing this curriculum, that young people like you should have been around the table as well, to say, this is what we need, this is what we're missing?
I mean, part of thanks to our campaign work, we did have the opportunity to meet with the team and discuss. But that was part of young people, our whole team kind of campaigning, creating a Christmas card action. We went and did another action outside the Department of Education, really pushing to show decision makers that we really have something to say and we would love a seat at the table, and we would really welcome still having that voice be listened to when it comes to Bridget Phillipson and the government taking on board these recommendations.
Well, I
honestly, if you think about, if you're trying to think about what young people want, why not ask young people, why not ask them what they want to learn, because then you're going to get the most engagement, right? So I feel like that should be common sense. I
could not agree more. Well, when I meet young women like you, I just feel the future is a lot safer than I thought it was. So thank you. Thank you both, Aditi and Maya, for joining me from the Lost Lessons campaign. So the phone in coming up. I'll tell you more about it in just a moment.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk and it is Petrie here with you through until 1 o'clock, and coming up at midnight it is your chance to talk back. So that's what I'd love you to do, and I want you to tell me about the education that you had as a child and what you think was missing from that education. I genuinely do not understand schools. They are supposed to educate us and prepare us for a world of adulthood, and I just don't think they've ever done that. I don't think I was taught anything useful. I genuinely, nothing useful at school. Maybe reading. That's about the only thing I still use, maybe a bit of writing. But if you know what I mean, it seemed to me like this golden opportunity to prepare kids for school. So I want to know, actually, every time I say kids, I think of my Uncle Basil, who would have said they're not goats. So I'd have been told off for saying that, children. But anyway, joining me to discuss this, and I hope you give me a call, 0344 499 1000. Joining me to discuss this and to go through the papers in a bit is Simon Diggins, retired colonel and host of a very brilliant series, I've told you about it before, of the Sun's Superpowers Exposed series. And I've just watched your one on Poland, which is excellent. Simon, what do you think? I went to a comp. I don't know if you were comprehensively educated or privately educated. But what is lacking in the education system?
I think one of the things that was highlighted, I agree with, is actually this transition. And how do you transition from quite often formal academic subjects and how they might be applied into the real world of work? And it's not straightforward. And some of the things about character, personality, talking to people, how do you get the thing right? It's just so obvious. Went to a local cafe today, and some 17-year-old right from the beginning says, "Call me mate, all right, mate, all right, right." And I was thinking, actually, I'm not your mate, and I don't want to be unfriendly to you, but what I want is good service, which he didn't really quite do. I don't want to be called mate, and it's kind of understanding that there's a sort of world of work which is different from a kind of group of children working together. So I thought the idea that came out from your earlier guests about little bits of bites of work here and there, and the chance to work with older people and get a sense of the world outside is important. I think sometimes our schools have become quite hermetic. They've become quite sealed in, and they've got this sort of little sort of almost like a priesthood of teachers who teach the subjects, rather than thinking, how does this apply to the world? Not that everything needs to be kind of functional, because actually philosophy, art, music, poetry, all those things actually get you through life. And it may not be obvious to you when you're actually struggling to get the rent for your house or whatever you're going to do. But as you go through life struggles, some of those things come through as well. And a sense of that, there are you can go book pharmacy programs.
But it's a sense of learning for the sake of learning, right? And the young women there at Maya and Aditi, I think it was Maya that said it's the exact, we're learning to an exam. So they're teaching to an exam. So it's like, right, in geography, right, you need to know this. You're not learning anything. It's just you're just repeating what you've been told, and I think that is a tragedy.
I think it is. I think if you can't enthuse people, about sort of the wonderful differences we've got in this world, it's exciting to go to a different country. It's exciting to learn about them. Where is that excitement? If the excitement is just sort of where's the capital city and here's a few basic economic facts, then you've just lost it. But I think which one was Maya who talked about sort of helping people to kind of understand sort of where migrants come from. Why does that? Why is that important? Because we're such an interconnected world.
And it has to be.
You have to make geography interesting, make history interesting from there. And your point about science. I mean, science is all around us. Science is absolutely central to our futures. Make people understand that when you start to do some studies of physics or some chemistry or biology, there's a practical application to that. And I think that's got to be there.
That's exactly what I needed. If in physics they taught me about electricity and how that flows, and that can be applied to me, changing the plug sockets in my spare bedroom. That's great,
Yeah.
right? But you know, like you said, even with other sciences, chemistry, baking is just chemistry, right? It really is, and you've got to be so accurate.
Yeah, no,
and I'm a baker, so I love accuracy. So, you know, that is an application to
Yeah.
it. But maths, logarithms, I was like, when am I ever going to use this stuff?
It depends what you do. To be honest, I think the thing is
But then give me an application.
give you an application for it, so you understand. So
Yeah.
I get that.
If somebody had said to me, you can use a log table to measure the square footage of your carpet that you're
Yes.
going to buy,
Yeah.
brilliant.
Yeah, yeah.
I might have engaged in it.
During lockdown, we had all those lessons to do, and I was very fortunate with my children. You know, we went out into the park and into the woods, and if we wanted to do diameter of tree, you know, wanted to know what's a diameter, we went out and did that, and it just gives us a sense of what these words mean. And I know it's hard on the teachers in the classrooms. You know, a lot of my family are teachers, so I understand the challenges they've got, but they're often quite good at sort of, you know, the pedagogy, how you get people to pass the exams, but their understanding, the application, why it matters. I think we need to put a little more live creativity and kind of imagination to it.
Yeah, I mean, I get the sense as well that secondary schools, I mean, the comprehensive system, even the woman that invented the comprehensive system says it doesn't work, right? And I don't think the comprehensive system does work. And I think it hasn't done for a long time, but nobody's brave enough to change it. But there's just there's no joy in it. There doesn't seem to be any pleasure in learning, and the system itself doesn't take into account that people, okay, there have to be rules, right? But there doesn't seem to be any nod to that people have different skills, right? At the age of 14, you know if a pupil, you know if your own kid. I knew with my kid, he was not going to be interested in the sciences.
Okay.
It was a complete pointless waste of energy, him even going to those classes, as indeed it really pretty much was for me. But he's brilliant at English. He was a fantastic poet. He won competitions. You know, all of these things. And so just to divide those children so they don't get bored with learning, and what happens is it gets knocked out of them.
Yeah, it's very interesting because the system that used to exist, you know, when we had kind of grammar schools, and originally, of course, there was those technical and business schools,
yes.
and then there was so-called secondary modern schools from there. So we did actually recognise a long time ago that people had different skill sets, different aptitudes, and everything that went with it. And along the line, we've lost some of that. And I think some really good schools are able to reproduce and recreate some of that. But I think one of the challenges we're going to see, and I know that the Education Secretary is bringing some change at the moment, is don't lose the good things that have happened as well in the last few years. I mean, I'm very impressed. My older daughter just started her GCSEs. I mean, the standard of work she's doing, I struggled with, and I did O levels, but I did an additional maths O level. The stuff she's doing now for GCSE is additional maths O level. So some things our standards have gone up much higher, and I think what we need to ensure is, and people are saying there's too much in the curriculum. There may well be, but let's not lose the standard, because that's also important. If people can make that standard, let them do that as well. So
I also, like I said, I think you recognise where a child is better suited at about the age of 14, when they've already done their maths and their English and they've already got those skills down pat. And then if they're not going to be interested in English or any of the so-called arts, you know, or they're going to be scientific, I think you know. And then you stop them from being overloaded with subjects that they're not going to be able to learn with or not interested in, and they don't lose the love for the subjects they are doing.
Yeah, I think the other thing I'd offer, though, is a slight corollary to that too, is actually this idea of kind of lifelong and life-wide learning, because it may well be that somebody who at age 14, 15, 16 says, no, I'm going to go and study, you know, in order to qualify as an electrician or plumber will be, actually there's something else in there as well, or they might want to do it. So I think the other thing we need to try and think about doing is how do we give people opportunities later in life and
to relearn,
or actually do new subjects and everything that goes with that. So I think
they do that in Germany. They're always educating.
They're always, and the Americans do. I mean, every American I've worked, you know, you tell what are they doing? They're continuously re-educating.
Doing a master's degree.
They're doing a master's degree, PhD.
That's true.
They just do it, and we don't have that attitude in this country.
I trained as a teacher.
Good for you.
For adults. Of adults. But
It's actually a very noble profession, and so I've got members of my family there. We've all got good stories and bad stories about them.
Yeah, I trained as a teacher of adults, but I've never really used it. Right, Simon and I are going to take a break, but we will be back in just a moment to look through the papers.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This.
Hello there, you're with Talk and you're with Petrie, and with me is Colonel Simon Diggins. See, we can still call you Colonel. People don't realise that. I mean, you're allowed to keep that rank.
Yes, I do.
Yeah. The Colonel. Yeah. Let's have a look at The Sun. So The Sun has gone with a Meghan story. I'm Meghan a movie. That's a very clumsy headline, Sun. You can do better than that. Duchess of Sussex is returning to acting 8 years after announcing her screen retirement.
You've got to love The Sun, haven't you? You've got to love the royal family, because we've just dealt with the artist formerly known as Prince Andrew, and here we have Meghan sort of popping up and making an announcement. Interesting, her husband just made a really good statement on remembrance, but that apparently isn't enough in terms of publicity. We've got this instead, and I think it's a little bit of a shame. I think there's a half serious point there, which is. And this is this haunting thing, is what do you do with the spares? What do you do with the rest of the royal family who are not required? Prince William's obviously desperate to ensure that his future is in place and the monarchy's in good order, but he's also got 3 children. One's going to be his successor, maybe potentially a future king, but there's 2 more. Yeah. What's he thinking about how they're going to live their lives? And how normal their lives are going to be, because the danger is we just have a repetition of what we just had with them.
That's very true. I mean, the little girl might turn into Princess Anne. I mean, they wouldn't.
Yeah, absolutely.
Who does a fine job.
Yeah, absolutely.
Although she doesn't look very happy, so maybe he doesn't want her to be doing that. But listen, Meghan, she was an actress. I watched Suits. I didn't think she was all that brilliant, but I think that. It's what she knows. Yeah,
absolutely.
And they're obviously poor. They need the
cash. If you live where you live out in California,
they need the cash.
You need the cash. That sun cream you need is amazing over there. Yeah, absolutely.
The Times newspaper, curriculum overhaul. We've just been talking about that. Will set back social mobility, says Gove, and Gove would say that because they're scrapping Gove's English baccalaureate that he brought in, thinking that would make people do more of the harder topics and not the Mickey Mouse topics, as he called art, which I don't think is Mickey Mouse at all.
No. The thing about Michael Gove is that, now Lord Gove, is that regardless of your party politics, most people thought that the work he did as Education Secretary was absolutely first class, and that's I think he's one of those individuals who I think is concerned that whatever changes are made, and I think you do have to refresh the curriculum from time to time. We don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, and the hard work that had gone into improving math standards and bringing in things like the e-back, which another approach, and we talked earlier about having a variety of approach of different people. You know, maybe that's the right answer for a group of people. So I think always the danger with Labour, God bless them, is that they always want to have everything the same. It's got to be the same across the whole piece.
Yeah, it's not fair otherwise.
It's not fair otherwise. Actually, there's something about having a mixed economy.
Yeah.
And I think a mixed economy idea applies into education as much as possible. One size does not fit all. We have millions of really wonderful young children and people going through education. Let's find enough variety, enough flexibility, so we can find something that fits with different people. And I think that's the worry with what things they're doing. Not just the detail of the curriculum changes, but losing that broader flexibility.
No, I would agree with that. Men's belief in their superior driving fails the crash test. Do you think you're a fabulous driver?
I'm looking for wood to touch.
Obviously.
I'm looking for wood to touch. I'm touching my head. The danger is if I say I think I'm quite a good driver, I will have an accident tomorrow. So thanks, Petrie. I don't know. I clearly we're not by the reporting, and I think it's very foolish, even someone who thinks they're a good driver, to rest on their laurels. I think driving is a continually updating skill, and
it's a continually dangerous thing to do as well.
It is. Yeah,
but a study found that 86% of men feel safe behind the wheel compared to 78% of women, and yet men are responsible for the majority of serious accidents.
Yeah, I think what I'd be quite like to drill down, and I haven't a chance to read anything properly, is the age, and whether it's age of men. It may well be men in general, but it may well be young people, and it may be younger men who are more liable, which is reflected in things like insurance.
I think it's all men.
I'm sure it is.
When I'm driving, I'm aware of them.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm aware of them. But another front on that front page, but I'm going to take it from another paper because there's so many people covering that. Lammy grilled over the latest jail bungle. This is the Deputy Prime Minister standing in for the Prime Minister in the Commons just earlier on. And Lammy is facing fury for dodging questions over escaped asylum seekers as a manhunt began for an Algerian wrongly released from jail in another embarrassing bungle. And all he said was, I've put in the most robust blah, blah, blah. So he said, well, you're obviously not robust enough, mate.
No, I think there's two issues, isn't there?
Shocking. There's two of them, yeah.
But I think there's also two issues. I think one is the incompetence that led to this second registered sex offender who should be deported anyway, being raised. And then secondly, I think unfortunately there's his behaviour in the Commons, where if I describe his behaviour as disingenuous, it's probably about as mild as I could want to say. But 5 times, I mean 6 times, is exactly the same question, knowing this is coming out, I think the Times have got it, knowing actually there was a second offender on the loose, clearly the Tories had got hold of it, and he wouldn't stand up in the Commons and admit it.
That's disgusting behaviour. It's like we're all stupid, right?
It is, yeah, and we're not. I think there are reasonable points we made about overcrowding in prisons. I mean, there's a prison quite close to where I live, HMP The Mount, where they've got nearly double what they should have in there, and that's clearly not going to help, and it's not going to help their administrative systems. That's evident. But so there's something needs to be done to sort that out. But I think he can't come, given the sensitivity of those issues, to come to the Commons and frankly, not tell the whole truth.
It's disgusting, actually.
Yeah, it's very poor.
I mean, the other thing, and as an ex-serviceman, I think this is a question that I should ask you. He wasn't wearing a poppy. How would that reflect on him, do you think?
I think I think it's poor preparation. I think it reflects badly on not just himself, but also his staff. Clearly his staff don't like him, because if anybody actually liked him, they'd have said, here's a poppy.
Here's a poppy.
I mean, we've all learned that. I mean, every year there's some unfortunate politician, media personality who, it's fallen
refuses,
out.
Or they refuse to wear them, and then they've got to answer the question.
Then they've got to go there. So to appear in Commons as a Deputy Prime Minister, Manchester.
I know.
Not wearing a poppy. It's just foolish. I'm sure David Lammy is as supportive as the Royal British Legion as everybody else is in reality. But if you're doing this public appearance piece here, where are your communications advisors?
Yeah.
Where are your staff who say, for goodness sake, get a poppy on you, sir. Here you go. One stuck in there. Off you go.
Yeah, I mean, because it's not just the Royal British Legion. It's a sign of respect for those men and women that are still fighting for us, have fought for us, and have died for us. I mean, that's for me. This is what the poppy represents.
It does. I don't get mawkish about it, and I always respect people who have a conscientious reason not to wear it, or rather not wear it. And there are people who do that, and I always respect them for that. But I think it is one of those events, one of those times when most people kind of come together across the country, and it doesn't matter. I mean, there's a great photograph, I think, from the 70s of punks wearing poppies. And I do remember, a French officer who I worked with at Staff College, who also had got, saw these punks wearing poppies, and he said, in France that never happened. If your alternative, you'd simply not do anything or see anything that was establishment. And here he was seeing these punks with poppies. He was very curious and quite respectful of it, and good for him.
Good for him. Right, let's have a look at The Guardian. Also, Lammy under pressure after 2 more prisoners mistakenly freed. And then the news from New York. This radical, according to a lot of people, radical communist lefty Democrat Mamdani, who won the mayoral race by quite some considerable number. And it seems to have really put the back up of the Republicans.
Well, I think it has. I think what it says in many respects is that the Democrats are back. I mean, after the disaster of Biden, the disaster of Kamala Harris, they kind of seem to have lost their way completely. Now, he's definitely from the left. He calls himself a democratic socialist, which curiously, if you look at the constitution of the Labour Party, it calls itself a democratic socialist party as well. He had our own dear Jeremy Corbyn manning the phones in New York to get him out. So I think he sees himself in that line, along with people like Sir Bernie Sanders, who again is of the kind of socialist left from there. But I think it's not just him in New York City, but the governorate races also are going on
in Virginia and other. They all turned blue.
They've all turned Democrat, and I think that's the key thing. And I'm regardless of whether you agree or disagree with either Republican or Democrat politics, I think democracy works best when you have a decent opposition, and I think the Democrats will. I think the establishment Democrats are as worried by Mamdani as people like Donald Trump is. But I think the Democrats are back, and that's good for democracy. It's going to be good for America. I mean, and that kind of interplay and to and fro is there. And
we're going to have to start seeing nominations for president and vice president soon.
Yeah,
for the 28th. It's not long.
It really isn't not long. They've got the midterms next year.
Yeah, so they'll have to start deciding.
Sometime at the back end of next year, they'll start the next push.
The norms for
will come. We'll start. You can't get away.
It's got to be Gavin Newsom, isn't it?
You can't get away from American elections.
No, you can't. You really can't. Let's have a look at the Telegraph now and the very famous bonfire night at Edenbridge in Kent. Every year they have a committee and they decide on who they're going to set fire to with their big bonfire. And this year it is Starmer the Farmer Harmer.
Yeah, well, I'm completely with them, I'm afraid. I think I think farming is one of those industries. It employs, percentage-wise, not very many people, but it's one of the fundamentals of our country and our fundamentals of our economy. And if you move to an era when we need to have more resilience, that means that more foodstuffs produced in our country. And while there's all the kind of rather sophisticated arguments about sort of these measures on taxes on farmers only going to affect a percentage of them. It's their effect to them. It's hard being a farmer in this country. You're very driven by what the market says, but also what the government gives you in terms of subsidies. But if you want a countryside that not only feeds us but looks after the environment, you've got to look after your farmers. At the moment, they feel that they have not been looked after. So, they picked the right target, and I hope it was a thoroughly good bonfire when they set fire to them.
This is rather depressing.
Sorry, I wasn't there.
And this is rather depressing news though. We were talking about the budget yesterday. Pay per mile tax to hit drivers in the budget, and this is because electric car owners, of course, don't pay fuel duty.
No.
And because petrol cars already have pay per mile. It's called fuel duty.
Yeah.
But electric cars now will face an extra £250 a year bill as fuel duty revenue falls. It's almost like they didn't think it through, isn't it? Electric vehicle drivers will be hit with a new pay per mile tax in the budget.
Yeah, I think one of the challenges we've got is that we don't know what the whole budget's going to do, and there's a lot of kite flying going on at the moment. So lots of potential budgetary measures are being flown. They see what the reaction is, see how much pushback they get, and then either flies or doesn't fly. But all that really just kind of stoke up tension. But I get the sense is, what are we really trying to do with this? Are we trying to bring in more electric cars because it's better for the environment? In which case, why are we doing this? Or is the problem is that the budget black hole is so big that they're scraping around? I mean, and finding any excuse to try
anything. But the thing is that a lot of people, and this makes me so angry. A lot of people were persuaded to buy electric vehicles because they were cheaper to run, and now they're just going to be hit with a tax.
Yeah.
Because why? For no good reason. It's not for the environment, it's just to raise money.
Yeah.
And I find that utterly despicable. I really do. A lot of people, that will be painful.
It will be painful, and I say it takes away from the message that I thought we were trying to get. We've been here before. We had it with diesel, and people tried to encourage to buy diesel cars.
Yeah, remember that
years ago, and then
they got stuffed for that.
Absolutely stuffed for that. It's one of those things where you tweak around with one part of it, and the impact, the ripple of it goes on.
But it's just disgusting money grabbing, because there is no real reason for this, and it's going to be 3 pence per mile. And that is going to really have an impact on people.
Yeah.
It's not going to. I think it's disgusting. I really think it's absolutely disgusting. And migrants, the Daily Telegraph also gone with a story on the front page. Migrants given asylum despite sex charges. This will be depressing, won't it? Because we need to be assured that those people who are given right to remain here, which is a privilege for them, that they are not criminals or sex offenders.
No, totally. I think it's one of the most toxic issues in the country. But it's toxic for a reason, because it's absolutely wrong that somebody who is here as an immigrant, hopefully a legal immigrant, abuses their host country. And if they abuse it, in my view, they should be out. The fact that we haven't got a decent mechanism to get rid of them is shameful. And all the arguments run around the law. We'll change the law. It's really very straightforward. Find a way, change the law, and all the bigger issues around, so do we belong to the ECHR, all those are sitting underneath it and behind this. But if that law is no longer serving the purpose it was designed to do, which is to protect human rights, because we should have a right to be safe in our streets. If the European Convention on Human Rights is actually denying that, then there is clearly an issue. And the fact we've got to that stage, and we were instrumental.
But it's interesting, because the Human Rights Act, I keep saying this, is absolutely tiny. You could literally write it out on the back of a fag packet. Yeah. So it's the interpretation of it, and we're allowing wrongful interpretation. The Act itself and the court is good, but it needs to be so it can't be misinterpreted by lawyers or used with, because it's got massive holes in it, as we know. It's just one big loophole.
Yeah.
So tighten up the loopholes, and we don't have to change anything else.
No, I think one of the difficulties we've got, though, is it's written in terms of principles, and principles can be widely applied, whereas the rest of the legislation...
That's what I'm saying. If we just made it into laws, then it would work.
Yeah.
But nobody's prepared to put the hard work in to do that.
No.
And I don't understand why. The Financial Times discusses China will win the AI race with America. That won't please Donald Trump, although not much seems to these days. And France suspends Shein over childlike sex dolls.
Yeah.
Whoever thought that was a good idea?
Yes, no, that's absolutely...
What the...
Yeah, again, it's the money grabbing thing. I tell you what grabbed me on this one, funny enough, actually, was the top banner headline. If you want to understand why the USS Gerald R. Ford and a carrier battle group is currently sitting off the coast of Venezuela,
we know exactly why.
Exactly, it's about oil.
Yeah.
And I think that's the issue. I mean, Maduro is a scumbag, but leave that to one side.
But, I mean, just very quickly, we literally have got 10 seconds.
Yeah. Okay.
Venezuela, is he going to attack?
I think he's going to get. If you get rid of Maduro, then that's fine. If he doesn't, then expect more measures.
I mean, the president of peace, the colonel of loveliness. Thank you very much indeed, Simon Diggins.
My pleasure.
Talk back next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk. across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Hello, it is good to have your company this Thursday morning, and I hope you've all got your pens and paper and your crayons ready, because we're going to be talking about school. I want to know what it was like at school for you. I mean, the reason I'm talking about this is there is a serious reason about this. They're going to change and update the curriculum for schools across England. Wales has their own and Scotland has their own. But across England, they're going to start introducing things like learning about AI, which I think is incredibly important. Things have changed in the world, certainly since I was at school. I think the man with the red flag walking in front of the car is no longer there, for example. But things have changed, right? But there are fundamentals that haven't changed, that young people need to learn at school, or they need an education in it. For example, just being able to communicate properly. How many teenagers, don't look you in the eye, or look down at the ground, or can't communicate, or are always on their phones, or always on their game consoles? They are talking to each other, but not in a way that is acceptable when you're out in the actual world. So what do you think is missing from schools? If you've got children or grandchildren or both these days, you never know, you might be sitting there going, why aren't they teaching this? Why aren't they teaching that? I mean, genuinely, I was okay at school. I loved history and I loved English and I loved art. And I did a bit of drama, which I loved more than it loved me back. But there were things that was my brain, if you like. I wasn't mathematical, I wasn't science-based at all. But if they'd used those lessons in maths and science, particularly physics, in terms of what you can use in the real world, applied it, even chemistry. The application of chemistry to baking is extraordinary. I love doing that. I love the science of baking. I love the idea of, throwing bicarbonate of soda into a toffee that I'm making, and it becomes gets all air holes in it, and it becomes like a crunchy bar. All of those, the science of that. What wasn't that taught like that? That would have been exciting. That would have been fun. That would have been interesting. There are lots of things that they can do with education to apply it to the real world, but there seems to be a lack of real world education. There seems to be a lack of understanding that time at school is so important, particularly now since you've got to be in education till you're 18, right? It used to be, I think people could leave at 14, 15, but now it's 18. And I think there's an over-reliance in the education system of young people going to university. They go, they'll teach them all that. Right, they'll go to university and they'll learn, how to talk to people when they're at university. But they don't. They don't want to go to university, a lot of them. A lot of them are not suited to university. My son really wasn't suited to university. He hated it and he left without getting a degree. That's fine. Now he's doing brilliantly. But, it's not always the right path. And we're forcing these people. They should be taught it at school. So I want to know from you what you wish you were taught when you were at school, that you could have applied to your adult life. What put you off education? At what point that I hated all the sciences? I really did. But yet now I love fixing my oven like I did the other day, and I love figuring out I fixed my oven, I fixed my dishwasher, I've put my own electric sockets in. I love all of that and learning to do that and doing all of those things. So there was definitely part of me that would have wanted to learn that had it been taught in a way that was accessible or interesting at the very, very least. So listen, I want to hear from you. What do you think should be taught at school? What is lacking from the British education curriculum right now? What was a complete and utter waste of time for you at school? What have you never used again since you left school? What have you absolutely never used and you think was a total and utter waste of time? And what about your kids who are at school now, or your grandkids? What are they learning? Is any of it really helpful, really interesting? I mean, for example, at school with history, I did enjoy history, but I didn't learn any modern history. I didn't learn about the First World War or the Second. It was all the Henrys and the, you know, back in the day. It was, I mean, it was fairly interesting. I liked it because it was just storytelling. But I've never used it. I mean, it's never been of any help to me. Whereas, you know, the world of work that I've gone into, having a really deep understanding of the First World War, the Second World War, geopolitics, how countries interact with each other, trade routes, all of those things. That is the application of education. That is something that we need as we become adults. Those are things that a basic understanding of, you know, migration patterns of people throughout the centuries. People have migrated. You know, the understanding of why wars happen. Where, you know, just talking there with the Colonel about Venezuela and the reason that Donald Trump is bombing boats, that even specialists have said there's no way that they're carrying narcotics because they'd have to refuel 12 times to get from Venezuela to the borders of America. That he's going after their oil. So those things are basic understanding of the application of history to what we can, so we can understand the world as it is today. That, to me, is what's lacking in education. There just isn't enough of it that is applicable to the world that we live in. But what do you think? What do you think that modern schools should look like, should teach? And what should be taught and what shouldn't be taught? What is a waste of time? Give me a call, 0344 499 1000. I need to tell you that calls are charged at the national rate, but we do call you straight back. And you can text the word talk and your message to 87222. Let's talk to Georgina, who's here in London. Georgina, good morning. How are we?
Good morning, my darling. I'm absolutely fine. I'm getting a little bit nostalgic when you were talking about school because I did love going to school. I think schools have changed so much though now, Petrie. They're unrecognisable from when I was a little girl, which is eons ago. But I have had a few children since then, so I've been able to see the differences that's taken part over the last 50 years with my own children. I mean, when I went to school, you were taught things like domestic science, which was cooking and sewing and...
Oh, I completely agree. I did that at primary school, actually.
Yes, well,
the headmaster's wife taught us the basics of a roux, the basics of mince pies, you know, of cooking with mince, so you could make a shepherd's pie, or you could make all of those basics. And they were they have been. I was about 8 or 9 years old when I was taught that.
And how fabulous was that you still remember? And
I still use it, obviously, yeah.
Well, yes, because we've got to eat, and it's good to know how to cook, how to sew a button on, how to change a plug, how to do all these little domesticalities that if you haven't got anyone around to help you, you're quite able to do it yourself. But you know what is lacking with the educational system today is respect, Petrie. They're not taught respect like I was. Well, I'm a lot older than you, darling, but, you know, when I was a little girl, we were taught respect for our elders. I mean, the way you see now children talking to teachers, children, you know, identifying as animals in class and using litter trays. And for goodness sake, that should have happened when back in my day, they would have carted you off to the nearest asylum.
It is interesting because it does seem to have flipped, doesn't it? That I don't think children should live in fear of schools, but there should be respect there.
There has got to be.
Yeah, or at least faked respect. There were a lot of teachers I didn't like at school, and we would be, you know, there was one called Mr. Tatham, and so every time we were stood next to him at the traffic lights, we'd all go, "Spud," and pretend to sneeze, and we thought we were hilarious. Of course we did, but yeah, I think that has gone because children don't have to obey the same rules we had to obey. They don't seem to have any.
They don't have any rules at all, and there's no accountability. And also, when they do misbehave, there's no consequence, Petrie, nowadays, because the teachers have very little power.
Are you old enough to have had physical punishment at your schools?
Yes.
So you've got
not
there was
that I ever did. Not that I ever.
No,
did,
of course not, because you were an angel. If there had
angel.
been it, I would have got it for calling Mr. Tatham Spud. But yeah, I think that I was just the other side of the cane and the slipper.
Yeah,
So
well, we had the cane. The cane, you would get caned if you.
for girls as well.
Girls as well, absolutely. I mean, there's naughty girls as well as naughty boys.
No, but the girls at my school, before they banned it, before I got there, the girls got the slipper and the boys got the cane. I mean, it's archaic when you think about it. But
I've got to say, I really do feel that there has got to be some. Listen, I'm not talking about standing a child and smacking its legs. I'm not talking about punishments like that in school, but there has got to be some kind of deterrent, because that is what's lacking now. And remember, the children of today, Petrie, are the adults and the voters of tomorrow. So we've got to be very careful, or we're going to end up with a society that's uncontrollable and who think they can do anything with no consequence. And also, what's really worrying to me now is the indoctrination that's happening within our schools politically. I feel when children are little, and I'm talking from sort of infants going on to primary schools, I don't think there should be any kind of political rhetoric given by teachers to children. I think that's totally wrong. A child has got to be a child, and I don't think that there should be indoctrination by teachers in schools. When they get to university, then if they're going to take political studies, then yes, be very political, you know, and learn everything you can about politics. But I don't think that children should be force-fed politics at an early age. I think it's very
think I have the same opinion of religion. I think children should be taught about religion, but not in religion. So I think that children should be taught about all the religions that there are, but I fundamentally and totally disagree with religious education. I on every level, I think it is toxic.
But when
that's Catholic, that's all of them. And I feel the same way about politics. I think children as young as 8 should be taught about our constitutional rights and our, and how government works and how, so they should be taught about politics, but not politically. So it should just be, right, there are 600 odd MPs, this is the job that they do, this is what they're supposed to do for you, and you vote for them. And I think very young children should be taught about their duty to vote, that you have to be part of the system, but I don't want them taught in politics any more than I want them taught in religion.
That's exactly how I feel. I feel giving them the basic bones of how it all works.
Unbiased,
fine. An unbiased view. But to actually go into the teacher's own political views, which is happening a lot now, Petrie.
Yeah, I mean, that is wrong. That's fundamentally wrong. But I mean, I wasn't taught anything about government and politics when I was at either school. I just wasn't. We didn't have any class. I didn't. When you leave and then you're 18 and then you can vote, it's like, what am I voting for? How does that work? Is it what's PR? What's not PR? All of these things. What are they lying to me? There was nothing. There was absolutely nothing about politics and what the different parties stood for, or what they meant, or what they'd historically achieved, or what they'd historically failed at. None of that. We need that as a basis, surely.
We do need, when you get older in schools, then you need to learn more, if you wish to learn more. But I feel that teachers now, they see it's their God-given right to give their own views to children, and I think that's fundamentally wrong. As with what you said about religion, I agree totally with that. I mean, when I was at school, you didn't have a choice. You went into assembly in the morning, you said prayers, you said grace before you ate, you know, and that was the way it was, because, you know, it's a Christian country, and I suppose the schools, that's the way they were back in those days, and we didn't have any lessons on other cultures. That wasn't a thing when I was a child either. I know when my children were growing up, and one of my sons came home and said, "Mummy, we're doing a day about the Muslim religion." And I guess I've never heard of this before, having these days for different religions.
This is brilliant, just to have a basic understanding of different religions, and you know, looking at the philosophies like Buddhism, and it's fantastic. But not to be taught only in that religion. I fundamentally have always disagreed with religious schools.
Yes, I agree with that.
And I think they should be banned. I mean, it certainly didn't do Northern Ireland.
Another form of indoctrination.
It is, of course it is. And
you can't have that.
It didn't work in Northern Ireland with segregation of schools, right? It doesn't work for society. It doesn't. It's not cohesive for society. So immediately, if I was Education Minister, I'd ban all religious education in that regard, religious schools.
I think with children, no form of indoctrination works in the long run. A child has got to develop and blossom in its own time.
Yeah.
You can't force these things. Believe me, I know. I've had a lot of experience. I've done a lot of mileage. So, you know, I've seen it all. And with children, they have got to become themselves. It takes time.
Yeah.
You can't force these things,
No.
you know. But it's lovely to think that there's someone who actually does think like me, because I thought I was one on my own.
No, I don't agree with it. I think education is about supplying children with the ability to think for themselves, not to be told what to think.
But I do feel that we need to go back to a few old-fashioned values, Petrie.
I think that domestic sciences should be taught to boys and girls. They were in my school. It was boys and girls that learned cooking and sewing and all of those things. Like you said, changing a plug. Yeah, that is a really useful. Mind you, these days you don't really need to, do you? Everything comes with a plug. Do you remember in the old days, Georgina, we used to take the plug off the hairdryer to use it on the toaster.
Something else.
Yeah, because there were never enough plugs in the house.
I remember, Petrie, because I've never been any good with all things electric, and I changed the plug, and I thought I was so wonderful changing this plug, and I'd obviously. I wired it up wrong, and I remember sticking the plug in. There was an almighty flash, and all the lights in the house went out, and I didn't know how to change a fuse, so I was in the dark.
You see, this is all the stuff that we should be taught in science lessons, is how to change a plug. I mean, my son the other day, I was talking to him because I just fixed my oven because the heating element blew, and so I'd done all that, I changed all that, and I called him up and I said, because he was going to come around and help me move the oven. I said, I've managed to do it, and he told me off. And he said, Mama, so you fixed it? And I went, yeah, it's all working now. And he went, why have you never taught me any of this stuff? Why have you never sat me? I know. I said, well, I'm just learning it myself. You know, you just do it. And if he's got a problem now, I'll go around and fix it at his house. So.
Oh my God! I know my youngest son. I mean, he's still at home, and I love sewing, Petrie. I love sewing. And he comes in, he says, Mummy, what are you doing? I said, I'm sewing. And I've been teaching him how to sew.
Brilliant.
And he's really enjoying it. He's really enjoying it. I didn't think that, you know, I thought he might think it's a little bit girly or whatever. And he said, well, Mummy, you know, show me how. So he's making a teddy bear. So I know.
That's
I
so
know.
sweet. Well, I taught my son. Listen, I'm not a hopeless mother. I did teach him to cook. He's a very, very good cook. He does all the cooking for him and his girlfriend.
Wonderful.
And I did teach him to do a bit of baking as well as cooking, but he prefers cooking.
Who taught you how to bake, Petrie? Who taught you?
Me.
You taught yourself?
I did.
Mummy didn't do it?
No, my mother was hopeless. Do you remember the programme Butterflies? That was, my mother was that level of cook. Terrible.
My mother couldn't cook. She couldn't boil an egg.
No.
My grandmother could make anything out of nothing. Those
I love that.
days oh my goodness, she could make a meal
that.
out of nothing. And I remember she used to make the most amazing stew and dumplings. And she used to always
Wow.
she'd say, Georgiana, come on, stand up here. And she'd put a little penny on me. And I used to help her pile the vegetables and
see, that's really sweet. My dad was actually a really good cook, and he would allow my mum and dad divorced when I was very young. I think I was about 4 or 5 years old, and so weekends with my dad, I had a cookery. I've still got it actually, but this cookery book, which is well thumbed and loved and everything. And he used to let me bake and cook in the kitchen and make a mess and do all of those things. But even just this weekend, I decided I wanted a cinnamon bun. And I thought, well, look, you don't need to go and buy one, you can make one. So I did. I made myself some cinnamon buns.
You made your own cinnamon bun. Well, I am
Delicious.
very impressed. Petrie, you are a woman after my own kidney.
Bless you. I love chatting to you. You take care of yourself, Georgina. I'm very proud. I sent Gabriella, my producer, the picture of my cinnamon buns fresh from the oven. And that's not a euphemism. Quick break, back in a second.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Hello there, it's Petrie here with you, and it's your chance to talk back. We're talking about education because the Education Secretary, now Bridget Phillipson, announced a new curriculum that is coming forth for our young people in England. I think that I'd be interested to hear what Wales and Scotland do, actually, if you're listening from there, because I'm wondering about the education system as a whole and whether it is actually fit for purpose. The comprehensive system, I think, just doesn't work. The woman who invented it even says, look, it really isn't working the way that she thought it would idealistically work, and so that doesn't work very well. But what should we be teaching in school? What are the lessons that you think you would have benefited from if you'd had them at school? And I mean, basically, we weren't taught of anything useful. We weren't taught how to budget. We weren't taught what a mortgage was. I didn't even know what a mortgage was. My best friend, who I went to see last week, actually, we've been friends since we were about 8 or 9 years old, and her dad was an estate agent, and so she told me that about mortgages in that sort of 8-year-old kind of way. But I didn't know anything about them. I didn't know anything about the interest rates on credit cards or you know, what APR meant or nothing. I mean, absolutely nothing useful at all taught at school. The only thing I got, like I was saying to Georgina then, was the very basics of cooking when I was very young, again, about 8 or 9 years old. And that has stuck with me through life. And so I did teach my son how to cook and how to be brave with cooking. And I've always said to him, look, cooking is about expression and about flavour and knowing what flavours go together and just chucking it all in there. Experiment with it, there's no problem. Baking, on the other hand, is scientific, and don't you dare put a grain more in anything or a minute longer on the clock on anything, because it will fail you, because it's science. That's what I love about baking, actually, is that it is so you just have to concentrate on it, whereas it's art. Cooking is just art, in my view. Just throw things in and see how it works out. But apart from that, I can't think of anything. This has really made me laugh. This is from Phil in Chelmsford. You made me laugh, and you've really taken my memory back. He said, "Hi Petrie, since I left school 40 years ago, I've never drawn a pie chart, taken up cross-country running, played a recorder, or covered a textbook with wallpaper." Do you remember that? Do you remember having to cover your books? You had to take them home with you and then cover the books in wallpaper. I love that, Phil. That has really reminded me. It reminds me as well about my cross-country career. Can I tell you about that just really, really quickly? It's a long story, but I'll cut it short. So we used to have to do cross-country. I went to a school called Magdalen College School in Brackley, and they were really big on cross-country, and I, with a passion, everybody hated cross-country, right? And so what I used to do is I used to cheat. So I would run off and then hide in a hedge, and wait when the loop came back round. And I thought I was being really clever. And so sometimes I'd leap out, you know, make sure there were no teachers around or whatever, and then you'd come out and cover yourself in mud, and then I'd join the front pack, and then I'd join what I thought was the middle pack, and then I'd join the end pack. So I thought I was being really, really clever. But at the end of the end of the season, my timings were so excellent that they signed me up for the county cross-country team. So that I told you maths wasn't my strong point. So yeah, I got put into the county cross-country team. So that's a lesson learned there for me about cheating. You never prosper, never ever prosper. Right, let me tell you how you can prosper though. This is amazing. Do you want to win 100 grand? Then listen up. It's our biggest cash prize, and it's a massive £100,000 completely tax-free, and it could be yours if you're the lucky winner who gets picked to come to London on the 13th of November. Is that next week? For November 2025, for a chance to win. Just listen up. 100 grand could be yours.
18 plus UK excluding Northern Ireland. For a chance to win, text the word money to 83338 and you're in the draw. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You must have the bill payer's permission, or you can enter for free by calling 0330 880 3338. All entries must be received by the 6th of November at 4 p.m. This is a TalkSport Limited promotion run on TalkSport, Talk and Virgin Radio UK stations. Full terms and conditions at talksport.com.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile. The home of common sense. This is Talk.
Hello there, and a very good morning to you. It is Petrie here with you until the top of the hour, and this is your chance to talk back. Got loads of great messages this morning. Hi Petrie, it's Josie in Birmingham. Hello Josie, she said, I love your show. Thank you, that's very kind. I think kids should be taught about crime and carrying weapons and the punishment. Maybe then we wouldn't have all the stabbings and young kids carrying knives. I think that's an excellent idea. If young children, so I've got a hair somewhere. If young children were taught about the dangers of knives and what knives did to the human body and what would happen to them on arrest and what would happen to them if they ended up in prison, I agree with you, Josie. I think that is a brilliant idea. That should definitely be on the curriculum. And she said, and I love your hair and nails. Thank you. Yeah, I thought I was going to be down with the kids and do lime green. I think I failed, but anyway. Lee says, I agree with you on religious schools. I wish I'd been taught about politics in school. I didn't vote for years as I didn't understand it. I'm 48. He said, I'm glad you fixed your oven. Yeah, it was the heating element, Lee, after all. Yeah, I think that that is really lacking about democracy, how important democracy is. We've got an entire generation of people who don't vote, who won't vote. They don't think it's important. They don't see why it's important to vote, why it's necessary to be part of democracy, and the democracy collapses without that. So I'm absolutely 100% convinced that we should all have been taught about why you vote, why it's important, what the different parties stand for, you know, even discuss what your own politics might be, what you think you like, what you think you don't like, and just literally basically teach us how to be, you know, to use democracy, because you use it or lose it. Kaz has said, cross-country team, that's unlucky. Honestly, because one of my friends, because they used to put everything up on lists, so cross-country team, hockey team, all of that, and the cross-country, and one of my mates went, you're in the county cross-country team. And I went, don't be ridiculous. Of course I'm not. I'm far too clever for that. I completely foxed all the teachers. No, there I was, on the cross-country team. We used to run around the corner to have a smoke. They always picked the coldest days. Coldest, wettest, most disgusting days ever was always cross-country. I absolutely hated it. Kaz also says, a waste of time was algebra. Who's used algebra? Anybody used algebra? Oh, come on, Adam. What have you used algebra for? Rubbish. Oh. No, he said he's used it to work out prices of supermarkets. Yeah, I got a calculator for that. It's on my phone. Anyway, so Adam's used algebra. He's the only person. He's the vision mixer, by the way. There you go. Let's go back to your calls now. And Janice is in Wakefield in West Yorkshire. Hello, Janice. How are you?
Hello.
Hello. Good morning to you. How are you doing?
I'm all right, thank you.
Good. What are schools lacking, Janice?
Well, basic financial things like mortgages, how to run a household, how to do budgeting for your food, etc. When I first got married, I was absolutely hopeless. I didn't even know what a mortgage was.
No.
Or why it was, and different kinds of mortgages. You know, it would have been so helpful to have started off with some knowledge rather than let my husband do all the thinking for me. And he was a bit more, you know, good at maths and things like that. But
it's so important. I mean, even just understanding your electricity bill.
Yeah.
You know, that with this, I don't even know what the letters are, is it? I keep wanting to say miles per hour or MPA, whatever it's called. You know, a kilowatt, that's what it is, isn't it? I mean, what does that stuff like that? Why aren't we taught that stuff? You have to learn it the hard way.
And why do we ever play hockey?
What was the point of hockey? That was always a cold, wet day, wasn't it?
Cold, wet day, cold, wet legs. Oh. Going home with your legs aching because couldn't get dry.
Yeah, they were always bright red, weren't they?
Always, yeah.
Did you do cross-country as well?
Legs were red, yeah. And you got hit with a stick quite regularly. And shinty. We used to do shinty at my school, whatever that was. And it was so cruel.
It was awful because you were always playing against girls who really were violent. and they got all their anger out on.
Yeah,
on
the girls who didn't like you always make sure you got a crack on the legs with the stage.
I was always the littlest as well, so I could run quite fast. I was always running in the opposite direction to the ball.
It was awful.
Horrible. Sport at school was cruel.
I think they're very important. It's very important to know, navigate your way through life, knowing a bit more about what you're doing with your money and how you should get a mortgage and pay a mortgage and
do a basic tax return, because a lot of people will have to do tax returns, even if you're a PAY. Some of them are picked to do a tax return. So you have to. None of that was taught, and credit cards and how they impact and impact your credit rating and all of those things. It's so important that young people know how those things work.
Well, I'm quite an old person now, and when I actually left school and I went to work. I left school one week and worked the following week basically, and I had to learn how to handle my own money then, and that was another problem. How to do my own banking and
and nowadays ISAs and savings and pensions.
I haven't got a clue.
Yeah.
And luckily my sister, who was a bit older than me, she was very good at maths and things. She sort of helped with financial things, because I didn't know how to do all that.
I'm still terrible at it. I'm still
shocking.
terrible at it. I mean, I have to pay a very, very expensive accountant because I'm just useless at everything.
Well, if I needed to, I'd have to do the same thing, because I would get into an awful mess if I had to do all that sort of thing myself. I mean, I'm not working now, so I don't have to. But it's very, very difficult when nobody teaches you, shows you how to do it. And I just think it's been all my life. It's been a problem.
Yeah. And if we were just taught to apply that, if maths lessons were right today, we're going to teach you about interest rates and why they can impact this, etc., etc. And that's a way of teaching maths that we can actually apply. And that was the thing, is that none of these things to me made any sense because they couldn't be applied to anything.
No, and I've never done a long division since I left school.
Who has? Adam probably has.
I still couldn't do one, because I used to put my numbers where I thought they went, and that was it. Really.
Long division. Oh my gosh.
Long division. Oh dear.
Oh, it was the logarithms for me and the log tables. I never saw the point of that. We always carry the log tables around with us for some reason.
And I never needed it after I left school. Never needed it, but I mean, I suppose they thought we would somehow. Things had changed, and they perhaps were living in the past, because it never came up at all in my life, a long division.
No,
again.
and also for, I mean, all the times tables, I suppose I still don't know them.
They're quite useful, but you don't remember them. I
still don't know them, because I've got a calculator on my phone. That's what I do with that.
Well, I suppose they didn't see that coming, all that kind of thing. I mean, technology has made our brains a bit lazy, but I think...
we had calculators at my school, and what I do remember how to do is to spell the word boobs in numbers. We all
I know what you mean.
We all learnt what boobs look like in numbers upside down, but that's about the only thing I can remember from my maths lessons.
Yeah, I mean, it was. I quite like my school days. I'll be quite honest. I did like the school days. We had a nice, nice carry on. But I just think there was things that weren't touched on, and it's such a shame, because it would have been. I didn't even know they weren't touched on until I left school.
That's right. That's the thing. And then if we'd just been taught them then the decades that we've panicked when we've seen a bill come in, or had to do a mortgage, or relied on somebody else to do it for us, it would have all been gone. And I just wish that they're going to hopefully teach kids now how to budget.
I hope so, because most kids are hopeless at money.
Yeah.
One of my grandsons isn't. He's pretty good with his money. He's pretty good, but the girls don't seem to have a clue about money, and I just think,
it grows on trees. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it does, definitely.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Can I have?
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Oh, it's lovely to talk to you, Janice. Will you call again?
I will, certainly.
Lovely, lovely. You sound absolutely gorgeous. Kaz says, I went to a convent school and I hated the very fact that I was a rebel. If there was any trouble, it was my fault. I loved sociology and home economics. I wish they taught me about money, loans and mortgages, etc. My dad taught me DIY. Yeah, it's a lot of us are saying that. It is all about all those life skills that we've had to kind of bumble along learning, and sometimes probably making terrible mistakes on the way. And if only we'd been taught that would have been been so much more useful than any of the stupid maths that I did. Les is in Cheshire and has called this morning. Morning, Les.
Morning, Petrie. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Did you know how to spell boobs on your calculator?
Well, yes. Well, I used to do it on pen and paper, or I used to do it by an abacus, to be fair.
Yeah, you couldn't quite spell on the abacus, could you? But with the calculator, you could. Tell me what you think about schools today. What should they be teaching?
I think the education process is just missing a complete and utter point. The thing is, they're not being taught practical skills. They're taught more theoretical skills. Now, one of the things I was brought up on when I was young from my father, he was a complete DIY fanatic.
Right.
And one of the things he bought, and I don't know if you remember this, I mean, I'm probably older than you are, was the Reader's Digest Complete Do-It-Yourself Manual.
No.
No. Now, it consisted of 445 pages, and I've still got the book.
No way.
Yeah, I've still got it. You can't get it anymore, because I've looked online for it, and you just can't get it. But there's 445 pages of everything you can do within the home. Do it yourself.
No. What kind of thing? I mean, like, complicated things?
Yeah, plumbing, electrical, plastering, bricklaying.
Oh, I so admire plasterers. That is such a skill.
Exactly. And the thing is, that was a complete compendium of skills that I was brought up on.
Yeah.
And ever since I was like 9 years of age and my father was doing all this do-it-yourself thing. I mean, he wasn't brilliant at it, to be fair. But at the end of the day, he got the job done. And the thing is, given the fact that this book has been handed down to me over the years and I've kept it, it is absolutely brilliant and it does the job. So I think people in schools today should be taught these practical skills as opposed to teaching them about diversity and all this other rubbish. You know what I mean?
Well, I think diversity is a good thing to learn because that's the world they're going out into. And I'm in favour of young people learning about the world they're going to be living and working in. So, you know, if it isn't a diverse school, then they need to learn that the world they're going into will be a diverse one. But they may want to travel the world and they need to learn about other, you know, languages and cultures and things like that. But I do agree that there is a massive hole in education when it comes to learning about the practical things that we all need to know. And like I said, one of the practical things is about democracy, about voting, about why that's important. Another one is about, you know, the stuff you're talking about, the practical things that you can do in your own home, and cooking, and, you know, all of these things that they should be being taught. But for some reason, like you said, it's all sitting down and book learning now. There doesn't seem to be that much in terms of the stuff that we actually need to know as adults.
Yes, but the thing is that if people want to learn something, it's quite easy to go online and look online at a problem, and then you can come up with a solution on it.
But you've got to have the confidence. Now, isn't it? Yeah, I mean, I agree with you on that, but I think what a school education will teach you is to have the critical thinking to believe that you can do it. So that's what needs to be taught. I mean, yes, people can go online and they can learn how to, like I did, you know, change a heating element in a dishwasher. But you've got to have the critical skills to think that you can do that, and then the critical thinking skills to carry that through. So I think that's what can be taught at school, isn't it? Is don't be afraid. You know, just you give you the confidence to do these things that a lot of people don't have.
Yeah, but sometimes when it comes to critical thinking, you could be influenced by other people who have certain critical thinkings, and then you could be adverse to that critical thinking, which may be incorrect.
Well, I've always said children should be taught how to think, not what to think.
Well, that is true. Absolutely true.
And that again, I think, is lacking in schools. I think that children are not taught how to think. They're taught how to pass an exam. They're taught how to remember something. They're not taught how to think about it. They should be taught how to think. That is the most important thing that any child can learn. But they must never be told what to think.
Yeah. But anyway, so if you can dig out in your loft to read the Digest Complete Do-It-Yourself manual, if you've got one.
I don't think we ever had it, but I'll check it out. I'll check it out. I mean, look, I love doing a bit of DIY. I do loads of it. I really enjoy a project. It's good fun.
Every single thing.
Never tried plumbing. I wouldn't touch plumbing,
It's a simple process when you look at this book. It's just so simple. You know what I mean?
Yeah, as long as you switch the water off, what could possibly go wrong?
What can possibly go wrong?
Every DIYer's saying. I'll give it a go, Les. Why not?
As long as you've got a telephone number you can rely upon when it goes wrong.
Yeah, I've got Sean the plumber. It's fine. Sean will rescue me. Good to talk to you, Les. Right, I've got to take a quick break, but I will be back in just a moment.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk and it is Petrie and I'm with you until the top of the hour, and I've just got to let you know from Monday the 1st of December our talkTV app is on the move. In fact, it will disappear. So the talkTV app will go. All of your favourite shows and podcasts though will continue over on the Talk app. So all you've got to do is just go onto your wherever you get your apps from and find the Talk app and download that. So if you're watching or listening on the talkTV app right now, you'll need to change it because that'll be gone. It will just disappear on the 1st of December. So go to your App Store or Google Play and get the Talk app so you don't miss a moment. So do it now. Well, don't do it now. Do it at the top of the hour because we're talking right now. Got some messages here I want to read as well. I love to learn, and many will say I'm the most accomplished man that they know, but none of that is attributable to my schooling and its one-size-fits-all ethos. That's my problem with it. He says, at 7, I was taking vacuum cleaners to bits to see how it worked, and then my contemporaries were still reading Dick and Dora and Spot the Dog. School never really caught up. Then there were the teachers, some of whom should never have been let loose anywhere near a kid. Their methods hinged upon physical punishment with empathetic teaching well down the list. I've been left school 51 years and I'm still bitter about my years there, years that held me back. Education was poor then and is unlikely to improve until it encourages industry, innovation and individualism. And I know it's hard, they say it's hard to do that, but the system at the moment is rubbish, and it has been for many, many decades. And that's from Tad, who's in Cambridge. And lovely Mila has sent me a message as well. She said, you've been serving looks since New Year's. Look amazing, thank you. Me and MJ are always locked in. Your shorter time slot, though, is diabolical. Talk, do better. Love you. Yeah, love you too. That gorgeous picture of MJ. Oh, so sweet. It's a cat, by the way. Thank you for that. And then evening, this is from Sam, evening Petrie, school really needs to teach proper cooking, changing plugs, proper life lessons for both boys and girls. My lad, 28, we had to fight for cooking GCSE because he was a boy. That's ridiculous. He's now a fully trained chef. Unfortunately, he's had to become my carer, but he's hoping to plan a soft, slow return, at least to part-time work next year. I'm so proud of him. But yeah, even basic decorating. Oh, that's a good skill. That's really a good skill. I do all my own wallpapering as well. Yeah, because I love it. I love the challenge of it. So yeah, it's good. Absolutely true. One of my colleagues here could have done with a basic decorating course. Embarrassing. Anyway, let's talk to Kevin. Kevin is in Basingstoke. Hello, Kevin.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Good.
You
Yeah,
remember me?
very well, thank you. Yeah, for a Wednesday, Thursday. So what do we need to teach at school?
Well, I think we definitely need to teach the basics because there's so many children that leave school that can't really read or write properly. And without that, I mean, how can you teach children about, science or history or geography or even
everything is lost, isn't it, if you can't read?
And they're going to struggle through their whole life. So they need to you need to be up to a certain standard with reading and writing before. And
it's shameful that kids are leaving primary school and even second without the basics. I don't know how that's possible, but they can't read or write.
Yeah, exactly. So definitely that. And also you spoke about religion. I don't think we should have religious schools because it's like segregation, isn't it?
Yeah, it didn't work in Northern Ireland. That's always what I always point out to people. The Catholics and the Protestants. It caused more problems for longer.
Yeah, I mean, it's okay to teach religion in school.
I agree.
But all religions.
Yeah.
But teach it as this is what these certain religions believe in. Don't say this is true. It's up to the child.
Absolutely. You taught about religion, but not in religion. Yeah.
It's almost grooming, isn't it?
I absolutely think it is, yeah. And I've always said, you teach children how to think for themselves. You don't tell them what to think. And that's what's lacking, is the children are not getting critical thinking lessons. They're not being told to think for themselves, you know, to think about what they're seeing. Is it true? Could it be true? Should I get another source? Should I read something else? Should I check this? That's what they need to be taught.
Yeah, I mean, it's okay for a parent to take their child to church and bring them up in a certain way.
Exactly.
But because I mean, if your parents are Catholic, you're going to be a Catholic, aren't you? If your parents are Jewish or Muslim, you're going to be Muslim, and that's not really your choice.
No.
And also, I think sex education. I mean, I haven't been to school for a while, so I don't know how this is taught. But what I do know, there is a lot of sort of like people are abused in their own families. On the whole, it's mainly in the home, isn't it?
Absolutely, percentage-wise, yeah, almost in the 90s of percent, yeah.
And children need to be taught that you know, this is definitely not acceptable and you should report it. I mean, they probably do, but that's the sort of thing that should be taught in schools. And also fake news and politics. I think that's very important because, I mean, children are online so much, aren't they?
Yeah.
And what they're reading, I mean, a lot of it isn't true, and they're being sort of like I say again, they're being groomed.
Yeah, and I always taught my son, I mean, that's the benefit, I suppose, of being brought up by a journalist. I always said to him that never just take anything at face value. Always double check it. Always, because as a journalist, that's what you do. You triple source, or you double source, or you try and read the other side of the story to make sure that what you're seeing is true. That's how you learn to read between the lines. That's how you learn to recognise a fake story. And I never told him about religion. I said, whatever, you learn all the religions, and then whatever you fancy, that's up to you. He's been like me and decided that religion isn't for him, any of them. But that's fine, that was his decision. But I taught him how to think. I didn't tell him what to think.
No, you should always